If you type Bulletproof on Facebook Marketplace and set your location to Los Angeles, you'll find some weird stuff for sale like a Louis Vuitton bulletproof vest, a bulletproof whiteboard. Want a coffee table? Why not a bulletproof coffee table? So I bought 5 random items that the sellers claim to be bulletproof, but we're gonna see if they can actually stop a bullet or if I got scammed. Ranked from practical to most impractical, I bought my first item from a woman in Huntington Beach. It's a bulletproof backpack insert. Honestly, when I'm walking around the streets of LA or riding my motorcycle, I wouldn't mind having one in my backpack, but this honestly feels like a really flimsy paper magazine. We're first gonna use a 9mm out of a SIG P229. First Facebook Marketplace body armor caught the 9mm.
How's his chest?
Flat. So far it's looking good, and my first purchase was not a scam. But how far can we take it? Next up in firepower from 9mm is probably a 50 caliber muzzleloader, but we're not using a typical 50 caliber slug. In my John Wick pencil video, we used the Stabby Labs FN pen as an armor-piercing projectile. Since it has a tungsten alloy penetrator tip, it was able to easily poke a Ticonderoga-shaped hole straight through a human head. But in retrospect, I was too far from the target because it looks like the John Wick pencil keyholed slightly sideways. The first marketplace armor is holding it better than expected. But now we need more firepower. We need the dill dart. If you remember, the dill dart is equivalent to a 3-foot long, 50 caliber, 5,000 grain projectile, which means it can do some serious internal dill damage.
3, 2, 1.
The dill dart would have absolutely wrecked somebody's internal organs, despite the protection.
He's dead, man.
Oh no.
The armor is completely unusable, and if you look closely, it doesn't look like it uses woven Kevlar. Instead, it looks like it's made from layered plastic sheets, specifically polyethylene, which are common in lower cost armor. In terms of value, I'm gonna give this a completely arbitrary score of 8 out of 10, would buy again. For item number 2, and slightly less practical, there was a seller in Huntington Beach that had a box full of what he claimed was bulletproof underwear. Honestly, when I'm walking around the streets of LA or riding my motorcycle, I wouldn't mind having a pair of underwear that could prevent any unwelcome penetration. Inside the underwear is a layer of Kevlar, although it seems suspiciously thin to be effective against a bullet. So right off the bat, this isn't looking too promising, and I might have gotten scammed out of 60 bucks. Because of how thin it is, we'll start with a 22 and work our way up.
Alright, so it went through here. Nothing on here. Can't even feel it.
Pass.
Pass.
So it is technically bulletproof. And next up in firepower from 22, and because I forgot to shoot with a 9, is the dill dart. Would you feel protected wearing these underwear? I'm actually pretty optimistic after seeing the 22 results.
2, 1. God damn.
I think it blew this entire thing through his crotch.
So the bulletproof underwear was easily overpowered by the dill dart, which means it would not work for what I need it for. And after a quick Google search, way too late of course, I found out that these weren't even designed to stop bullets. They're actually British military blast shorts meant to stop IUDs. Next up is item number 3, which is an RTS Tactical bulletproof pillow, which, coincidentally, was also located in Huntington Beach. Honestly, when I'm sleeping on the streets of LA or riding my motorcycle, it'd be nice to have this pillow to use as a shield and to keep my head off of used needles. The pillow itself is made mostly from memory foam, but if you unzip it, there's a pretty thick Kevlar insert inside. So we're gonna use a Glock 19 chambered in 9mm to start with. Although some shots missed the Kevlar insert entirely, the ones that hit were easily stopped and I felt no bulges on the other side. So this passes and is not a scam. But if we had to get through this bulletproof pillow, we could obviously crank up the firepower and overpower the armor. But what if I told you we can get through it using something even slower than a 9mm bullet? In fact, 1/3 of the speed. To defeat Kevlar, you have 3 dials you can adjust: material, speed, and shape of the projectile. For this demonstration, we're just gonna focus on shape. Kevlar armor works by catching fast, blunt projectiles and spreading the energy out. If you look at Kevlar up close, this piece came from the underwear, you'll see it's actually a fabric mesh with small gaps between the fibers. Think of it like this piece of rubber. If you try to push a ping pong ball through it, it's not gonna work unless you really force it in. But now take something pointy like a pen, and Suddenly, all that force is focused on a tiny spot and it slips through much easier. Same material, totally different result. Now look at the shape of a 9mm bullet, which didn't make it through the armor, and compare that to a crossbow bolt. To put it scientifically, it's a whole lot pointier. Do you think it will make it through the armor even though the bolt is only going 1/3 the speed of a bullet?
Firing in 3, 2, 1. Oh, it went through.
Well, you might think the crossbow bolt pierced the armor just because it's 4 times heavier than the bullet. And that does help, but what if we use something 12 times heavier than the crossbow bolt, but with a flat blunt tip?
Firing in 3, 2, 1. It's funny every time.
Looks like he's gonna get a good night's rest.
Forever. Didn't go through.
Oh, that's a big bulge though. Long story short, when it comes to penetration, just make sure you're using something pointy. However, if you're in a city where you think you're more likely to get shivved, like with the John Wick pencil, Kevlar may not be your best option, as we just learned. Take for example this jacket I also found on Facebook Marketplace. It's marketed as stab-proof, not bulletproof. What makes it stab-proof are its plastic armor plates which prevent pointed objects from slipping through. Bulletproof item number 4 is even more impractical, and the seller actually lives in LA, but when I tried to coordinate with him to pick it up, he told me he just moved to Huntington Beach. It's a bulletproof hat. It has an armor plate that's velcroed onto the forehead panel part of the hat. It's actually surprisingly comfortable, and you wouldn't be able to tell there's anything weird about it. Honestly, when I'm walking around the streets of LA or riding my motorcycle, this hat would be perfect because it's normally sunny and very dangerous here. We're gonna put it on a watermelon and start off with a 22. The bullet didn't go through, but you get a pretty big headache from the impact. So not a scam. But this reveals a different problem. Despite this being a super comfortable hat, this would only be worth it if I got shot in the forehead. What if somebody was using a shotgun?
2, 1.
Honestly, the guy who made the bulletproof hat might have been the last person who needed one. But it got me thinking, in terms of head protection, I remember seeing a bulletproof helmet with an acrylic face guard on Facebook Marketplace for $250. Definitely more effective than the hat, but also way more likely to make you into a target walking down the street. And even with that helmet, your mouth is still exposed, which got me thinking even harder. What if I got one of those bank transfer boxes, the ones you pass cash through, and turned that into a completely see-through helmet, full head coverage, and practically invisible? Only problem? The one listing I found had literally just been sold. So this is plan B, build my own from scratch. I found a guy selling bulletproof acrylic panels on Facebook Marketplace, the same ones used at banks and corner stores. And after 6 months of tinkering, I proudly built what I'm calling the world's safest bulletproof fully invisible full face helmet, or what's
Firing in 3, 2, 1.
As you can see, it worked beautifully. And because I'm super confident in this design, we're gonna skip all the other pistol and rifle calibers and test it against the Rod of Death, aka Rod. I'm pretty confident the head will survive after seeing how it held up against the 22. And since we used the fuse instead of a detonator, this feels like the perfect time to tell you we finally launched a new Stabby Labs product. First came our tiny 5th pocket knife, then the John Wick mail pencil. And now we just spent the last year making something that will help you de-stress and actually get more done. Introducing the Massive Nut. We're making a limited quantity for our first batch, so visit stabbylabs.com to learn more and use the coupon below for 15% off your entire order.
Is he alive?
Just big miss. We're also wrapping up 2 new products. One of them is called the 1% Lower, which definitely is not a firearm, but it's something that you can actually carry everywhere. If you want to be the first to know when pre-orders open, sign up for the Stabby Labs mailing list.